August 19th, 2017. A lorry with Turkish license plates rolls off the ferry at Dover. Inside the container, 42 wooden dining tables, wrapped in cellophane, destined for a storage unit in Salford, Greater Manchester. To customs officers, just another furniture shipment from Turkey. Hours later, armed police surround that storage unit. They force open the doors, and one by one, they begin smashing those tables with crowbars. What they find inside changes everything. Hidden within precision-carved compartments, 210 kilograms of pure heroin. Brick after brick of white powder. Street value, 63 million pounds. The largest heroin seizure in Greater Manchester police history. Have you ever walked past a business and thought nothing of it? A kebab shop, a pizza place, just another shop on the high street selling food. But what if behind that ordinary door, someone was running an empire of death? The man who orchestrated this wasn't some violent gangster covered in tattoos. He was 53 years old. Friendly smile. Thick mustache. He looked exactly like Mario from the Nintendo video games. That's what everyone called him. Mario. He served pizzas in a quiet town called Glossop, Derbyshire. His tax return said he earned £12,000 a year, barely scraping by. But Turkish police discovered he secretly owned a factory worth £1 million. How did a kebab shop owner hide one of Britain's biggest heroin operations for years? Before we dive into this story, hit subscribe right now. Drop a like on this video. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. Because this shows that evil can hide anywhere. Even behind a friendly smile, serving you pizza. Welcome to Shadow Case Files. Let's begin. Who was Fikri Yarashir? Fikri Yarashir wasn't some amateur who got lucky. He was a professional, a career criminal who'd been doing this for decades. Born in Turkey, he grew up in the world of drug trafficking. By the 1990s, he was already working as a logistics specialist. His job? Moving heroin from Istanbul into Europe. In 1997, Frankfurt, Germany, police arrested him along one of Europe's major heroin routes. The German courts showed absolutely no mercy. 10 years in prison. And when he got out, a lifetime ban from ever entering Germany again. For most criminals, that would be the end. Time to walk away. Find something legal. Live quietly. But Yarashir saw it differently. Those 10 years in prison weren't the end. They were just a pause. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to rebuild his strategy. He realized something important. The networks he'd worked with were still operating. The demand for heroin in Europe hadn't disappeared. Germany might be closed to him forever, but there was another country, another market just as lucrative. The United Kingdom. Britain had a large Turkish community. Thousands of Turkish immigrants running legitimate businesses. He could disappear into that community. Blend in. Look like everyone else. He chose a town far from London, far from the image of a criminal capital. A quiet, almost pastoral place in Derbyshire. Glossop. Yummies, the perfect cover. On the high street in Glossop, Fikri Yarashir opened a modest business. A pizza and kebab takeaway. He called it Yummies. To neighbors, he was just another hard-working immigrant trying to make a living. He smiled at customers. He remembered their orders. He asked about their families. A friendly face serving food. That thick mustache of his reminded people of Mario from the video games. And in criminal circles, that's exactly what they started calling him. Mario. The name fit perfectly. Because Mario was playing a game. A very dangerous game. His tax declarations painted a picture of struggle. He claimed to earn barely £12,000 a year. Barely enough to survive. Some neighbors probably felt sorry for him. But behind the counter of Yummies, while serving pizzas during the day, Yarashir was running something completely different at night. His phone rang constantly. But these weren't orders for kebabs. These are calls about drug shipments. About money. About logistics. The little pizza shop was just the tip. Underneath that ordinary business was a massive criminal operation. And Yarashir was building an invisible bridge. A pipeline for heroin into Britain. But he couldn't do it alone. The crew. Every empire needs workers. And Yarashir assembled a team of specialists. Each one playing a specific role. None of them seeing the full picture. Ahmet Taskin was officially just another employee at Yummies. In reality, he was the muscle. His job was receiving shipments, moving them from warehouse to warehouse, hiding tons of heroin behind stacks of imported furniture. The enforcer, Brian Kennedy, was a businessman from Scotland. He set up a company called Freight Forward Limited. On paper, it handled logistics for Turkish imports. In truth, it had only one real client and one real purpose: to serve as a front for Yerishir's smuggling operation. Then there was Paul Livesey and his partner Catherine Farron, a couple from Manchester. They became the money couriers, the mules. They flew to Turkey dozens of times, their suitcases stuffed with British pounds on departure, nearly empty on return. Over time, they smuggled at least 372,500 pounds in cash back to Turkey, drug money heading straight to suppliers. In North Wales, a man named Stephen Hindley rented a garage in the town of Rhyl. Inside, he built what criminals call a bash house: industrial presses, mixers, machines designed to cut high-purity heroin and press it into bricks ready for the streets. David Mulligan helped with equipment and logistics. 7 people, each playing a vital role, each thinking they were clever, each believing they were safe. Together, they formed one of the most ambitious criminal networks ever to operate on British soil. If you're fascinated by how investigators take down empires like this, subscribe to Shadow Case Files. Share this video. Comment where you're watching from, because what happened next shows that patient police work always wins. Operation Cartoon. No operation this big stays hidden forever. By late 2016, Greater Manchester Police's serious and organized crime unit started noticing things. Not hard evidence yet, just anomalies. Little fragments that didn't quite fit. Strange financial transactions. Large cash deals carried out by people who, on paper, earned almost nothing. One deal stood out. Someone bought a heavy-duty forklift, paid for it entirely in cash. For a legitimate furniture business, maybe that's normal. But when the buyers were already linked to other suspicious activity, it became a red flag. Why would people barely surviving need industrial equipment? Surveillance began. Officers started tracking meetings between known suspects and Fikri Yerishir. Slowly, connections emerged. A kebab shop owner in Glossop, a front company in Scotland, a warehouse in Salford. Piece by piece, the web became visible. The investigation was given an official code name: Operation Cartoon. At first, police had no idea of the true scale, but they were certain they were dealing with a highly organized criminal network, and they were determined to expose every single person involved. The long game. Operation Cartoon wasn't a quick strike. This was a long game. Detectives didn't rush to make arrests. Their goal was bigger. They wanted to expose the entire chain, from a mastermind at the top all the way down to the foot soldiers. For months, surveillance teams worked around the clock. They tracked Yerishir's every move, from a small pizzeria in Glossop to secret meetings in Salford to North Wales. Every movement was documented, every phone call logged. They were building a case, brick by brick, hour by hour. Then came August 2017. Intelligence confirmed a major shipment was incoming. Undercover officers intercepted a truck with Turkish plates just after it entered Britain through Dover. It didn't stop it. They shadowed it, all the way from Dover to Salford. Watching, waiting. The truck pulled into a warehouse on Cobden Street, and cameras captured everything. Yerishir himself, personally overseeing the unloading. Ahmet Taskin right there beside him. They thought they were safe. They had no idea that at that very moment, police were watching every single move they made. The time for the raid had come. The raid. Specialist armed units stormed the building on Cobden Street. At first glance, the warehouse looked completely ordinary. Furniture stacked everywhere. Dozens of identical wooden tables wrapped in plastic. Just a normal import business. But detectives knew better. One officer raised a crowbar. He swung hard. The tabletop shattered. And there it was. Hidden inside, carved with surgical precision, was a secret compartment. Packed tightly within it, bricks of white powder. They started dismantling table after table. All 42 of them. By the time they finished, the scale was overwhelming. 210 kilograms of high-purity heroin. On the streets, cut down and sold in doses, its value could reach £63 million, the largest heroin seizure in Greater Manchester police history. At the same time, another unit struck in North Wales. They raided Stephen Hindley's garage and rill. Inside, presses and industrial mixers, everything ready to cut and compress the drugs for distribution. The syndicate had been hit hard. Both the head of the operation and the production line taken down in one perfectly coordinated strike. Mario's empire was crumbling. The money trail. The drugs were crucial evidence. But in court, they wouldn't be enough on their own. Police had to prove conspiracy. They had to tie each person directly to the criminal network. That meant unraveling the financial web. Investigators started with Paul Livesey and Catherine Farron. They mapped every single flight the couple had taken to Turkey. Then they compared those dates against the gang's known drug transactions. A pattern emerged. Customs records and airline data revealed something interesting. Anomalies in baggage weight. Their suitcases were heavy when they left Britain, much lighter when they returned. Forensic accountants calculated that across dozens of trips, the couple had smuggled at least £372,500 in cash out of Britain. Drug money heading straight back to suppliers in Turkey. Next, they looked at Brian Kennedy's company, Freight Forward Limited. On paper, it handled international shipping, but bank records told a different story. Large payments labeled as shipping fees. Yet there wasn't a single genuine client beyond businesses linked to Yerushir, a textbook shell company, a money laundering front designed to disguise the movement of contraband. But the most devastating evidence came from abroad. While British police examined Yerushir's tax returns showing £12,000 a year, Turkish prosecutors uncovered something shocking. An asset registered in his name, a factory worth nearly £1 million. The gap between his declared income and his real wealth was impossible to ignore. Undeniable proof that Yerushir wasn't just involved. He was the mastermind of a multi-million-pound empire. The arrests and trial. With surveillance logs, raid evidence, financial records, and international cooperation all in place, police were ready. In coordinated strikes across northern England, Wales, and Scotland, every key member of the network was arrested. The empire of Mario collapsed in a single day. April 2018. Manchester Crown Court. One of the most high-profile drug trials of the decade began. In the dock, Fikri Yerushir and 6 of his closest associates. For 7 weeks, prosecutors methodically laid out the evidence gathered during Operation Cartoon. Yerushir chose a desperate defense. He claimed he wasn't a criminal at all. He said he was an infiltrator, that he joined the gang only to gather intelligence, that he hoped to become a police informant. But on the witness stand, a senior officer completely destroyed that story. Yerushir had never provided any information, had never made contact with police. To the jury, it was nothing more than a desperate lie from a man who knew he was caught. The evidence was overwhelming. Fingerprints on drug packaging, CCTV footage showing him overseeing shipments, financial trails proving his wealth, witness testimony from his own crew members. Judge Martin Walsh delivered his verdict. He described the operation as sophisticated and commercially successful, and he made clear that Yerushir was at the very top. The sentences reflected the scale of the crimes. Fikri Mario Yerushir, aged 53, 25 years in prison. Brian Kennedy, 18 years. Paul Livesey, 15 years. Catherine Farron, 9 years. Ahmet Taskin, 17 years. Stephen Hindley, 15 years. David Mulligan, 13 years. In total, the syndicate faced more than 110 years of combined prison time. Justice had been served, but the story doesn't end there. 110 years of combined sentences. The man who looked like Mario lost his game. If you believe justice was served, subscribe to Shadow Case Files. Hit that like button, share this video, comment where you're watching from and what you think about these sentences. The victims, 210 kilograms of heroin. That's not just a number on a police report. That represents thousands of individual doses, thousands of lives destroyed. Think about the heroin epidemic. Families torn apart by addiction. Children growing up with parents who can't function. Overdose deaths. Communities ravaged by crime as addicts steal to fund their habits. Fikri Yarashir wasn't just a businessman running an import operation. He was a dealer in death. Every kilogram of heroin he smuggled into Britain destroyed lives, ruined families, created addicts who would struggle for years or die trying to get clean. The irony is almost unbearable. By day, he served pizzas with a smile. He was part of the community. People knew him, trusted him, maybe even liked him. But his real product wasn't food. It was poison. While smiling at customers at the counter of Yummies, he was quietly poisoning their communities. Their children, their neighbors. That's the true evil of what Yarashir did. Not violence, not dramatic confrontations, just quiet, calculated destruction. Death served with a smile. Fikri Yarashir looked harmless. A friendly kebab shop owner with a funny mustache. Neighbors thought he was struggling financially. Customers probably felt sorry for him when business was slow. But underneath that ordinary appearance was a criminal mastermind. A man who'd spent decades perfecting the art of smuggling heroin. A man who built an empire worth millions while pretending to earn £12,000 a year. This story teaches us something important. Evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it wears a friendly face. Sometimes it serves you food with a smile. Sometimes it lives right next door. We can't judge by appearances. We can't assume that because someone seems normal, they're normal. But this story also shows something else. Something hopeful. Justice works. It might work slowly. It might take months of surveillance and investigation. But patient, methodical police work pays off. Greater Manchester Police didn't rush. They watched. They documented. They built their case piece by piece. And when they finally struck, the entire empire collapsed. To any other criminals watching this and thinking you're clever enough to hide, you're not. Eventually, the cameras will find you. The financial records will expose you. The evidence will build, and you'll be caught. Unlike Nintendo's Mario, this Mario didn't win his game. There were no extra lives, no continue button, no power-ups to save him. Just 25 years in a British prison, and a legacy of destruction that will haunt the streets of Manchester for years to come. Fikri Mario, Yarashir built an empire behind a pizza shop. For years, he smiled at customers while heroin flowed through Britain. But Operation Cartoon brought him down. If this investigation showed you that justice can prevail, subscribe to Shadowcase Files right now. Hit that like button. Share this video. In the comments, tell me where you're watching from and what you learned from this story. Thank you for watching. Until next time, this is Shadowcase Files.